Welcome to 1136 Ministries. I'm Sloger, and this is our online Bible study. And today we're going to continue in Hebrews 11. I'm going to read verses 17 through 22, and we'll look at the faith of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, and hopefully once again learn from them and then follow their good example. So let me read Hebrews 11, beginning of verse 17. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was offering his only begotten son. It was he to whom it was said, "In Isaac your descendants shall be called." He considered that God is able to raise people even from the dead, from which also he received him back as a type. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau, even regarding things to come. By faith, Jacob, as he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph and worshiped, leaning on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the exodus of the sons of Israel and gave orders concerning his bones. So, here's a really important lesson, and we'll hopefully be able to tie it in with everything that we'll talk about today. And that is simply this. Genuine, true, saving faith will be tested. It will be tested at varying times for different lengths, different intensities. But throughout the course of your life, as you're living and walking by faith, that faith will be tested. And it'll be tested for a couple of reasons, right? These are in no particular order, but first thing I'll say is it's tested to see whether or not it's real. Real faith ultimately never gives up and never gives in. It keeps going no matter what. In the course of a test, we can have setbacks, whether it's David and Bathsheba, Peter and the little servant girl. Their faith was tested and they failed at that moment, right? But that wasn't the end of the story. We see that faith has a moment where it might stumble, but it never ultimately is extinguished. It finds a way to get back up, to get back in the race, and to finish. It'll be tested so it's proven to be the real thing. It'll be tested to be purified and enlarged. And it'll be tested so that, as Paul would say to the Corinthians in 2 Corinthians 1, so that our faith would not rest in men, in the power of men, but that faith would rest in God who raises the dead, which is pretty much the first test Abraham was put through in this passage. We adopted a little boy from India, and it was quite a set of ordeals from the first time that we heard of him until we actually got him in our home. We went through a great deal of trial and difficulty, and sometimes, worrying and almost despairing. And then by the grace of God, he was finally brought to us and became a part of our home. We got him when he was about 15 months old. And one night when putting him to bed and we chatted a little bit and he kind of dozed off. And then I began to pray. And I can remember this like it was yesterday. I'm just thanking God for him and what a joy he had become to me and my wife. And then in my mind was the verse that Abraham had to deal with. Take now thy son, the son whom you love, and take him to the mountain and offer him up to me. And I began to weep. And I knew that God wasn't asking me to do that in the literal sense, but I also knew that God was not going to allow that little boy to become an idol in my heart. And I had to confess that in measure he had become that I needed to hold him more loosely and entrust him more fully to God. And Abraham's faith was put to a test in ways that very, very few of us are able to be asked to do what he was asked to do. But I want you to try to consider the depth of the test. He was the son of promise. Abraham understood, and he was told it's in Isaac that your descendants will be named. That the promise that God gave Abraham was going to have to go through Isaac to find its fulfillment. And yet, Abraham's being told, I want you to take him and sacrifice him to me. And what's amazing to me in the narrative in Genesis, where we're told the whole story, again, the Lord had to tell us everything about every event, but it seemed amazing to me that there's not much of a hint of Abraham wrestling with it or arguing or debating with God. He heard the command and he just began to take the steps to fulfill it, to obey it. And he understood some things that I think sometimes we don't fully appreciate, and that is ours is to trust and obey. There's too much today going on in modern day Christianity and the debates that we see online and the gospel endeavors where we seek to have a reason, an explanation, and a detailed triplicate understanding of everything that God says, thinks, and does. And folks, that's just not true. So here's Abraham's faith put to the test when he knows God gave me a promise that won't be realized apart from Isaac. But God is telling me to sacrifice Isaac. I don't know how God's going to pull that off. All I know is I need to trust him and obey no matter what. Let me give you a simpler, more modern day example of this. In Hebrews 10, it tells us that we're not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together as the habit of some. And at the same time, many Christians, probably almost every Christian that you meet along the way, can say there have been times and seasons when that directive has been put to the test because they've been hurt by the church. They've been lied about. They've been slandered. And so I don't want to forsake the assembly, but boy, going to church right now is pretty difficult because of hostilities. Years ago, I preached out in California, and after this evening service, the youth group came over to the pastor's house, and there was an elder from another church that was there with his family, and the daughter was really struggling because she got teased at church. Kids made fun of her, and she didn't have any friends there. And her some of the counsel that she got, I thought was incredibly insensitive. And they told her, you're not coming to church for your friends, you're coming for God. And for a teenager, it's like, well, that's true. Why bother going then? That we're not to forsake the assembly. We're supposed to go and worship God. We also live in a sin-fallen world where it's just not that cut and dried. And so we have to appreciate the fact that sometimes the directives or command of God seem to be in conflict with the unfolding of his providence. And if we waste the time and energy trying to fully understand that or fully explain that, or not just be appreciative of, you know what, sometimes life's just hard, it doesn't make any sense, but I've got to do what I know is right. I've got to trust and obey. Abraham, when his faith was put to the test, where he had a promise, but he also had a command, and they seemed to be in conflict, and he went to obey the command, believing that the promise God would keep in his own time and his own way. And I think that's a really important lesson for us. I don't have to understand how God will keep his promises. I just have to believe that he will. Romans 8:28 is maybe the most classic example of that. Romans 8:28, and we know that God causes all things to work together for good, for those that love God and are called according to his purpose. And I think all of us can say there are things that have happened in our lives where we believe Romans 8:28, but it hasn't been fully realized yet in this particular set of circumstances. And we just don't see how God can pull that off. How can God cause all things to work together for good when this happened, that happened, these horrendous, painfully difficult things. And again, my job is not to explain it. My job is to believe that the day will come when God will show himself to be faithful and just to everything that he's promised. Our job is, between now and then, to keep trusting and to keep obeying, even when it seems impossible. Abraham, when tested, offered up Isaac. And he who had received the promises was offering his only begotten. And he was told, in Isaac your descendants shall be called. So what did he do? Well, he considered that God is able to raise even the dead, if that's what it's going to take to keep his promises. Well, sure, that's what was going to happen, but he's like, it doesn't make any difference how it unfolds. God made a promise. He's going to keep it. I've got to obey. Then by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regarding things to come. Here again, faith is kind of put to the test. And we need to appreciate the way that Jacob and his wife almost like schemed against each other and manipulated the situation. And I believe that God will keep his promises. We're to obey his commands. And we don't have to be jockeying for position or get into a power struggle. Listen, folks, ours is to trust and obey. God has made us promises, that all the promises of God are yes and amen in Jesus. We don't need to manipulate, get in a tug of war. We don't need to hurt people. It's so sad. You know what? God knows what he's doing. And God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should repent. Has he not said it? And will he not do it? And has he not spoken it? Will he not make it good? You trust, right? And so we know that even in the moment in time when Jacob is blessing them, Isaac is blessing them in relationship to regarding things to come, at the time there was great conflict. That didn't change the fact that he knew the promises and expected God to fulfill them in the future in his own time and in his own way. By faith, Jacob, as he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph and worshiped, leaning on the top of his staff. Even when, again, his physical body is coming to an end, his time on earth is coming to an end, he's weak and he's feeble and he's leaning on the staff. He knew that his physical condition was not going to limit the power of God to keep what he has promised. He'll finish the good work that he started. Then it says Joseph, in regarding his bones. And again, you got to appreciate this. Hundreds and hundreds of years went by before the bones were taken out of Egypt and buried. I find it interesting because I think to myself on one level, well, what difference does it make where Joseph was going to be buried? God's going to have no more problem raising him from the dead in Egypt as he would in Canaan. So just go ahead, bury him. But again, it had to do with their faith was resting in God and what he has promised, and to different varying degrees, because they're not all the same. But there are situations in their lives that the exercise of the faith meant a certain thing concerning things in this life. And I believe Joseph wanted to do a couple things for his people. He wanted to be a reminder that it may take a while. Some of you may not live to see it, but God is going to free us up and bring us out of Egypt. And so because I believe that, and I'm trusting God, I'm going to give you a directive that when you guys leave, and you will, take my bones with you and bury me in the promised land. There are just things in which we do, and whether we raise our kids, the way we fulfill our domestic responsibilities, the responsibility we have in church or at work. Because we believe promises, it should set us apart in the way in which we live our lives. It should set us apart in the way in which we end our lives. When our life is coming to an end, we should be a people that are at great peace, have great comfort, knowing that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And we can say and do things by faith because we believe his promises that the unconverted and unbelieving just can't do. I've been beside a lot of beds where the person is on their way home or on their way out. They're passing away. And been times when you know that they're believers and there's a calmness, not only with them, but then it permeates the room. And then there's been those times when people aren't sure, or they know the individual does not know who Christ is and are going to die in their sins. And it's unsettling. It's really no fun to be around at all. And so we should strive to be a people who get in the habit, regardless of the test, the trial, the difficulty, because ultimately dying well is the final test. But if we're in the habit of trusting and obeying and passing the tests along the way, when it comes time for that final test of trusting God when it's going to matter most, when I'm passing from this life into the life to come, when that day comes, if I've been in the habit of trusting, obeying, I think it was Tozer, probably many others, who said basically this: the vast majority of us, there are exceptions, Thief on the Cross and a few others, but the vast majority of people will die the same way they live. And if you live trusting and obeying, you're going to die trusting and obeying. If you live apart from Christ, most people will die that way, apart from Christ. And so here again, we have these great examples. Abraham's faith was tested and he passed. Isaac's faith was tested and he passed. Jacob's faith was tested. Joseph's faith was tested. And you can look at once again the life of Joseph, all that he went through from the time he got sold into slavery by his own brothers. And you talk about a guy who was going to keep believing no matter what. His whole family, all his siblings turned on him. He ended up in the dungeon at Potiphar's house, and it just goes on and on and on. Yet he kept trusting, kept obeying no matter what. And then when he knew the time of my departure is near, it's at hand, I want to give you guys directives. This is what I want you to do with my bones, because I am convinced God will keep his promises. You know, it's certainly my prayer. I'm older now, and I pray all the time that I want to end well. And then I realize if I want to end well, I got to live well. I got to live trusting and obeying, because that's the way I want to die. I want to die trusting and obeying, believing that in his own time and in his own way, God will keep every promise he's ever made to those who believe. Amen. I hope you're encouraged by this. I hope you're challenged by it. And I hope then you seek to be an encouragement one to the other, that we encourage each other, and that we do our best to say, listen, nothing matters except trusting and obeying. Believe who God is, believe what he's done, believe what he's promised, believe most importantly in his own dear son, and walk by faith and live by faith and die in the faith. All right. If again, as always, I'm so thankful for all y'all and your support and encouragement. I got a phone call today from one of the pastors that I'm helping, and we talked for, half hour, 45 minutes. And there's just a lot of challenges out there. And I'm thankful that God has freed me up because of the help and support from y'all, that I can engage in ministry and encouragements to guys who are trying to make a difference. There's not enough good churches, not enough good pastors. So thank you for your support that I can help them along the way. If you're encouraged by this, let other people know. We're on Facebook, Twitter, or X, and YouTube, and Spotify, I think, and Truth Social. But thanks again for all your support. I pray for you. If there's anything I can ever do for you, 1136ministries@gmail.com. Just drop a line, let me know. If a topic you want me to cover, 1136ministries@gmail.com. Just let me know. But between now and next time, I'll be praying for all y'all. and that God will grant us all the grace to keep trusting and obeying no matter what, and that we live our lives in such a way that when we face the final and ultimate test that we'll all face, we'll be tested and we'll be proved that our faith was indeed the real thing and it brought us all the way home. All right. God bless you guys. Love you. And see you next time.